I hadn't slept properly in 3 weeks. Not since I arrived at my uncle's farm in Central Oregon, trying to outrun a life that had fallen apart back in Portland. My therapist called it a breakdown. I called it Tuesday. Either way, I found myself at 32 years old, sleeping in my childhood bedroom surrounded by fields of lavender and the kind of silence that makes city noise seem like a mercy. The insomnia followed me here, though. Turns out you can't leave your brain behind, no matter how many miles you put between yourself and your problems. So I'd gotten into this routine of walking to the old stone well around 4 in the morning, when the world was still dark and I could pretend I was the only person awake in the entire universe. There was something about that pre-dawn hour that felt honest, like the earth was taking a breath before putting on its daytime face. That morning, the August air was cool enough to raise goosebumps on my arms. I was wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, my feet shoved into unlaced boots, because I couldn't be bothered with the whole process of dressing like a functional adult. The gravel crunched under my feet as I made my way down the path, guided more by memory than sight. The well sat at the edge of the lavender fields, a remnant from when this place was actually worked by people who knew what they were doing, before my uncle turned it into more of a hobby farm with a few hired hands to keep things from complete chaos. I could see the outline of it against the slightly lighter sky, that old stone circle with its wooden roof and the bucket that nobody used anymore since they installed proper irrigation. I was maybe 20 feet away when I realized I wasn't alone. Someone was sitting on the edge of the well, hunched forward, elbows on knees, staring at nothing. My first instinct was to turn around. I'd come out here specifically to avoid human contact. But then he turned his head, and even in the darkness I could see the reflection of what little light existed in his eyes. Couldn't sleep either. His voice was low, rough, like he hadn't used it yet today, or maybe that was just how he sounded. I didn't know. I'd barely spoken to any of the farmhands since I arrived, too wrapped up in my own mess to notice much beyond my immediate misery. Something like that, I said, because turning around now would be weird. I moved closer, stopping a few feet away, unsure of the protocol here. Was this his spot? Had I been intruding on his solitary ritual all this time? "I've seen you out here," he said. "Most mornings. Wasn't sure if you'd noticed me noticing." "I don't notice much these days," I admitted. "Kind of going through something." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "Your uncle mentioned you were staying for a while, said you needed some space to figure things out." I felt a flash of irritation that my uncle had discussed me with the staff, but it faded quickly. What did it matter? Everyone could probably tell I was a disaster just by looking at me. I hadn't shaved in weeks, my hair was doing whatever it wanted, and I'm pretty sure I'd worn this same shirt for 3 days straight. "I'm Caspian," he said, standing up and extending a hand. "I know we've probably been introduced, but you had that look people get when they're not really here, you know?" I took his hand. His grip was firm, his palm calloused. "Marcus," I said. "And yeah, I've been pretty checked out. Sorry about that." "Nothing to apologize for." He sat back down on the well's edge, and after a moment's hesitation, I joined him. We sat in silence for a while, and surprisingly, it wasn't uncomfortable. The sky was starting to shift from black to that deep blue that comes before dawn, and I could just make out his profile now. He was younger than me, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair that curled at the ends and a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. He wore a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and I could see the outline of tattoos on his forearms. "So what's your story?" I asked, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, that's intrusive. You don't have to—" "It's fine," he said, a slight smile in his voice. "Fair question. I've been working here for about 2 years. Grew up in Bend, did the whole college thing for a semester, realized I hated it, and started looking for work that didn't make me want to walk into traffic. Your uncle hired me even though I had 0 farming experience. said he liked my honesty. That sounds like him, I said. My Uncle Robert was one of those rare people who seemed to operate on intuition and kindness rather than logic, and somehow it worked out for him. What about you? Caspian asked. What brings a Portland guy to the middle of nowhere? I took a breath, surprised to find I actually wanted to answer. I was a graphic designer, had my own small studio, a boyfriend of 4 years, an apartment in the Pearl District. All the markers of having my shit together, you know? Then I found out my boyfriend had been cheating on me for the last year and a half with my business partner, who I'd known since college, who I'd trusted with literally everything. Jesus, Caspian said softly. Yeah. So I kind of imploded, dissolved the business, ended the relationship, gave up my apartment and ran here like a wounded animal looking for a cave to die in. Dramatic, I know. Not dramatic, he said firmly. That's a lot of betrayal to process. The way he said it, without pity or judgment, just stating it as fact, made something in my chest loosen slightly. I'd been carrying this story around like a weight, and everyone I'd told before had either been overly sympathetic in a way that made me feel pathetic, or had tried to immediately problem solve as if there were easy answers to having your entire life revealed as a lie. The insomnia started right after, I continued. I'll fall asleep for maybe 2 hours, then wake up with my heart racing, replaying every moment, every sign I missed. It's exhausting. That's why I'm out here too, Caspian said. The insomnia, I mean. Different reasons, but same result. I figured if I was going to be awake anyway, might as well be somewhere that doesn't make me feel trapped. What's your reason? I asked, then quickly added, if you want to share, no pressure. He was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe I'd pushed too far. But then he spoke, his voice careful, like he was testing each word before releasing it. I came out to my family about a year ago. It didn't go well. My dad's a pastor, very traditional, very convinced that certain things are choices that can be unchosen. We haven't spoken since. My mom calls sometimes, but it's always this weird dance where she wants to talk to me but can't actually acknowledge who I am. It's like I'm dead but still walking around, you know? I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. My own coming out had been relatively easy. My parents had been surprised but ultimately supportive. I'd gotten lucky, and I knew it. It's weird, Caspian continued. You think you're prepared for rejection. You play out the scenarios in your head, imagine the worst responses. But when it actually happens, when your own father looks at you like you're something broken he can't fix, it hits different than you expected. Do you regret telling them? I asked. No, he said immediately. I regret that they couldn't handle it, but I don't regret being honest. I was tired of editing myself, of watching every word, of pretending. At least now I know where I stand. It's painful, but it's real. The sky was getting lighter now, that deep blue shifting to purple at the edges. I could see him more clearly, and I realized he was beautiful in that unself-conscious way some people are, like they have no idea the effect they have. Or maybe I was just starved for human connection and projecting. Hard to tell. I used to think I had it all figured out, I said. I thought if you just worked hard and were a good person and built something solid, that was enough. That life would reward that somehow. Turns out life doesn't give a shit about your plans. No, it really doesn't, Caspian agreed. But maybe that's not entirely bad. Like if everything had gone according to your plan, you'd still be with someone who didn't respect you. You'd still be in business with someone who betrayed you. Sometimes things fall apart because they were built on a faulty foundation. That's very wise for someone who's probably a decade younger than me, I said. He laughed, a real laugh that seemed to surprise him. I'm 26, and I'm not wise. I'm just good at seeing other people's situations clearly. My own life is still a mess. Join the club. We have t-shirts. They're wrinkled and possibly dirty, but we have them." He laughed again, and I felt absurdly proud of myself for making that happen. When was the last time I'd made someone laugh? When was the last time I'd wanted to? "Can I ask you something?" Caspian said, his tone shifting slightly. "Sure," I said. "Why the well specifically? I mean, there are a lot of places you could go at 4 in the morning. Why here?" I thought about it, trying to articulate something I'd never put into words. There's something about it that feels stable, I guess, like it's been here forever, serving this simple purpose, and it doesn't care about anything else. It's not trying to be anything other than what it is. I find that comforting right now. "That makes sense," he said. "I come here because it's the highest point on the property. You can see the sky better. When everything feels heavy, I like to look at something that puts it in perspective. All that space, all those stars, makes my problems feel smaller." We sat in comfortable silence as the dawn continued its slow arrival. Birds were starting to wake up, their calls tentative at first, then growing bolder. The lavender fields were becoming visible, rows and rows of purple-gray stretching out in neat lines. It was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. "I should probably head back," I said, not moving. "Let you get to work." "I've got another 20 minutes before I need to start," Caspian said. "Unless you want to be alone, I don't want to intrude on your ritual." "No," I said quickly. "I mean, you're not intruding. This is nice, talking to someone who isn't my uncle trying to fix me or my therapist taking notes." "You're in therapy? That's good." "Video sessions. She's back in Portland. We're working on what she calls rebuilding my sense of self, and what I call trying not to spiral into complete dysfunction." "Both can be true," Caspian said. Over the next few days, it became our thing. I'd walk to the well around 4 and he'd be there, or he'd arrive a few minutes later. We'd sit and talk about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in Bend, about his brief stint in college studying environmental science, before realizing he learned better by doing than by sitting in classrooms, about his love of cooking and how he dreamed of maybe opening a small restaurant someday, something farm to table that celebrated local ingredients. I told him about my design work, about the projects I'd loved and the ones that had paid the bills, about my ex, gradually in pieces until the whole story was out there, about my fear that I'd never trust anyone again, that this betrayal had broken something fundamental in me. "Trust isn't binary," Caspian said one morning. "It's not broken or fixed. It's more like a muscle that atrophies when you don't use it. You just need to rebuild it slowly." "When did you get so smart?" I asked. "I read a lot," he said with a shrug. "And I've had a lot of therapy too. Couldn't afford it for a while, but your uncle actually has pretty decent health insurance for his workers. I've been seeing someone in Redmond." The fact that my uncle provided good benefits to his farmhands didn't surprise me, but it made me appreciate him even more. It also made me realize how little I'd been paying attention to the life happening around me here. I'd been so focused on my own pain that I hadn't noticed the small kindnesses, the quiet goodness that existed in this place. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself sleeping a little better, not through the night, but longer stretches. And when I did wake up at 4, it wasn't with panic anymore. It was with anticipation. I'd find myself wondering what we'd talk about, what new piece of Caspian's story I'd learn. He told me about his first boyfriend in high school, a secret relationship that lasted 3 months before they both got scared and ended it. About coming to terms with his sexuality alone, without guidance or community, cobbling together an identity from internet forums and queer media, about the loneliness of being the only out person he knew in his small town. I told him about my first relationship, about coming out in college and how relatively easy it had been, how I'd taken that ease for granted, about the guilt I felt now, survivor's guilt almost, knowing that my experience had been so much simpler than his. "Don't do that," he said firmly. "Don't feel guilty for having supportive parents. That's not taking anything away from me. We can both exist with our different experiences." One morning, about a month into our dawn meetings, he brought coffee. Real coffee in a thermos, with a separate container of cream and sugar. "I figured we've been doing this long enough that we deserve an upgrade from just sitting on cold stone," he said, pouring me a cup. "This is amazing," I said, taking a sip. It was good coffee too, not the cheap stuff. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he said simply. We'd been carefully not addressing the growing thing between us. The way our conversations had become the highlight of my day. The way I caught myself thinking about him during the afternoon, wondering what he was doing, if he was thinking about me too. There was a charge in the air between us, something electric and terrifying and exhilarating. "Can I tell you something?" I said, the coffee warming my hands and giving me courage. "Always," he said. "These mornings, talking to you, it's the first time since everything fell apart that I've felt like myself. Like there's still a person in here worth knowing." He was quiet for a moment, and in the growing light I could see his expression, something tender and uncertain. "You want to know something? I started coming to the well earlier because I knew you'd be here. I told myself it was just nice to have company, but that's not entirely true." My heart was doing something complicated in my chest. "What is true?" "That I look forward to seeing you more than anything else in my day. That I've started measuring time by these mornings. That I think about you probably more than is reasonable for someone who technically works for your uncle." "The working for my uncle thing is a pretty minor detail," I said, my voice not quite steady. "Is it?" he asked. "Because I don't want to be something you regret. Some rebound situation where you're just looking for validation after what happened." "You're not a rebound," I said firmly. "You're the first real thing I've felt in months, maybe years, if I'm being honest. What I had with my ex, looking back, I'm not sure it was ever this easy, this natural." "It scares me," Caspian admitted. "How much I like you. I didn't come here looking for this. I was just trying to figure out my own shit, you know? And then you showed up, all sad and disheveled and trying so hard to hold it together, and I just wanted to know you, to understand what was going on behind those eyes." "I'm a mess," I said. "I'm unemployed, living with my uncle, can't sleep through the night, and I'm pretty sure I'm not done processing the last relationship. This is terrible timing." "Probably," he agreed. "But I don't think timing is ever perfect. I think we just have to decide if something is worth the risk." The sun was fully up now, golden light spilling across the lavender fields, turning everything purple and gold and impossibly beautiful. I looked at Caspian, at this man who'd somehow become essential to me in the span of a few weeks, and I made a decision. "I think you're worth the risk," I said. He smiled, this full, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "Yeah?" "Yeah," I said. "I don't know what this is or where it's going, and I'm probably going to be a disaster of a partner for a while, but I want to try, if you're willing to be patient with me." "I think I can manage patience," he said. He reached out and took my hand, his fingers threading through mine. His hand was warm and solid and real, and I felt something in me finally settle. We sat there as the farm woke up around us, holding hands like teenagers, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than grief. I felt possibility. I felt hope. Over the following weeks, we figured out what we were doing. It was tentative at first, both of us careful with each other, aware of our respective damage. But there was also joy in it, in learning someone new, in letting someone learn you. He'd come by the main house after work sometimes, and we'd cook dinner together in my uncle's kitchen. He taught me how to make proper pasta sauce from scratch, how to season cast iron, how to tell when bread was kneaded enough. I taught him about color theory, about design principles, about how to see composition in everyday things. My uncle, bless him, didn't say anything, just smiled knowingly and made himself scarce when Caspian was around. I'd have to thank him properly someday for giving me this space, this time to fall apart and slowly piece myself back together. Caspian and I would take walks through the lavender fields in the evening, talking about our days, making plans that extended beyond the next morning. He told me about his restaurant dreams in more detail, and I found myself sketching logo ideas, thinking about branding, feeling that creative spark I thought I'd lost forever. "You're really talented," he said one night, looking through my sketches. "You should do something with this. Start freelancing again, even if it's just small projects." "Maybe," I said. "I'm not ready to go back to Portland yet, but I could work remotely, build something smaller, more manageable, something that's just mine." "I think that's a good idea," he said. "You light up when you talk about design. That shouldn't go to waste." We still met at the well most mornings, even though we were seeing each other times too. There was something about those pre-dawn meetings that felt sacred, like we were the only two people in the world. We'd bring coffee now, sometimes pastries that Caspian had baked the night before, and we'd watch the sun come up together. One morning, about 3 months into whatever we were calling this, I woke up and realized I'd slept through the night. All the way through, it was 5:30, and I'd missed our meeting time. I panicked slightly, throwing on clothes and rushing down to the well, afraid he'd think I'd stood him up. He was still there, sitting on the edge of the well, watching the sunrise alone. When he saw me approaching, he smiled. "You slept," he said. It wasn't a question. "I slept," I confirmed, sitting next to him, slightly out of breath from hurrying. "I'm sorry I'm late." "Don't be sorry, that's good. That's progress." I leaned my head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around me. We sat like that, watching the day begin, and I realized that I was happy. Actually happy, not just less sad. It was a strange feeling after so many months of heaviness, like I'd forgotten what it felt like to have joy be the dominant emotion. "I love you," I said, the words surprising me even as they came out. I know it's fast and probably too soon to say, but I do. "I love you." He was quiet for a moment, and I felt a flash of fear. But then he turned to me, his eyes bright with emotion. "I love you too," he said. "I've been wanting to say it for weeks, but I was afraid of scaring you off." "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "Well, eventually I'll probably need to find my own place, stop mooching off my uncle, but I'm not leaving the area, not leaving you." "Good," he said, "because I have plans for us, long-term plans." "Tell me," I said. So he did. He told me about the restaurant he wanted to open, maybe in Bend or Sisters, somewhere close enough to source from local farms, including this one. About how he'd been saving money, learning everything he could. About how he thought maybe I could help with the branding, the design, be a partner in that sense. I told him about wanting to rebuild my design practice, but differently this time. Smaller, more intentional, working with clients I actually cared about maybe teaching design workshops, sharing what I'd learned, about building a life that felt authentic rather than impressive. We talked about getting a place together eventually, when the timing was right, about what that would look like, how we'd navigate living together, blending our lives, about meeting each other's families, though that was complicated for him, in ways I couldn't fully understand but wanted to support him through. "I want you to meet my parents," I said. "When you're ready, I think they'd love you." "I'd like that," he said. "I'd like to be part of a family that actually wants me there." "You are," I said firmly. "You're part of mine now. My uncle already thinks of you as family, I can tell. And my parents will too, once they meet you." The sun was fully up now, the farm coming to life around us. We could hear the other workers arriving, starting their day. Caspian would need to join them soon, and I had a video therapy session scheduled for later that morning. Life was calling us back, but for this moment, we stayed at the well, holding each other, watching the light change. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For being awake, too, for talking to me that first morning, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." "Thank you for letting me," he said, "for trusting me with your mess, for not running when I showed you mine." We kissed then, soft and slow, a promise and a beginning. When we finally pulled apart, I felt centered in a way I hadn't in years. Not because all my problems were solved or because I'd found someone to complete me. I was learning that completion came from within, but because I'd found someone who made me want to keep growing, keep trying, keep becoming. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked, standing and pulling me up with him. "Same time tomorrow," I agreed. "And the day after that." "And the day after that." "That's a lot of tomorrows," he said, smiling. "I'm counting on it," I said. We walked back toward the main buildings together, his hand in mine, the morning stretching out before us, full of possibility and light. The insomnia that had brought me to the well that first morning felt like a blessing now, a strange gift that had led me exactly where I needed to be. I'd come to my uncle's farm broken, convinced I'd never trust again, never risk again, never feel again. And then a farmhand had found me at a well before dawn, and everything had changed. Not all at once. Healing never works that way, but slowly, steadily, one morning at a time. As we reached the point where our paths diverged, him to work and me to face whatever the day held, he squeezed my hand once more. "I'll see you later?" he asked. "Absolutely," I said. "I'm thinking I'll make dinner tonight. I want to try that risotto recipe you mentioned." "I'll bring wine," he said. "And maybe I'll stay over if that's okay." "More than okay," I said. He kissed me once more, quick and sweet, then headed toward the equipment shed. I watched him go, this beautiful, complicated, kind man who'd somehow become my person, and I felt grateful. Grateful for the breakdown that had brought me here, for the insomnia that had driven me to the well, for every painful step that had led me to this moment. My therapist would be proud, I thought. I was finally learning that sometimes falling apart is just making room for something better to grow. That endings and beginnings aren't always distinct. That sometimes they're the same thing viewed from different angles. I turned and headed back to the house, already looking forward to tomorrow morning, to another dawn at the well, to another day of building this new life with Caspian by my side. The sun was warm on my face. The lavender fields swayed in the breeze, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be.